Hi, this is Shane Starr, and today's video was inspired by a Rusted Typology video in which he compared the Enneagram to Socionics. Today, I'm going to look at the simple pluses and minuses of each of the four systems that I cover in my videos, and that is MBTI and MBTI-based systems, Enneagram, Socionics, and Big Five. So without further delay, let's get started. Okay, positives and negatives of MBTI. The positives are pretty easy. It's very pragmatic. 16 personalities, everyone knows what it is. Anyone coming through that door knows what it is. My colleagues over here and over there, they know what it is. They've taken the test. Anyone out there in the pool, if I ask them what their type is, they probably all know. They could probably all tell me. And even if they don't understand it, even if they type themselves backwards, whatever the case may be, at least it's something you can talk about in a somewhat meaningful way with people. That's kind of cool. Everyone gets it. And that's the main utility of MBTI, at least in Southern California in the United States in 2025. That's how it is. What are the negatives? First of all, there are different interpretations of MBTI. So the 16 personality site doesn't use the cognitive functions. It's just as much a Big Five test as it is an MBTI test, and that gives people problems. Other systems, such as cognitive personality theory, which do use the cognitive functions, instead of highlighting your top two functions, they highlight the first and third functions, which results in different typings for some people. Like I was typed by Harry of CPT, and the type he landed on me was ENTJ, which no one else has ever typed me as that. And his reasoning was that he saw a lot of TE in me, mostly, and SE secondarily. So TE and SE for him equals ENTJ. You could flip that around, it would equal ESFP, but he didn't go that route. You could look at from SE demo, and that would be ESTJ in Socionics. You could flip that on its head and have TE demo, and you'd be in ESTP in Socionics. So the different interpretations of the MBTI types can result in different typings and more confusion than clarity. Same with objective personality systems, Dave and Sean Powers. Great system. They understand the feeling, thinking, intuition, sensing, judging, perceiving a little bit different. Not that different, but different enough to where you're going to get a different type in that system. And that's an issue. Last but not least, the whole rational versus irrational types, JP switching. And this is a tough one because logically, Socionics has it right with judging lead types being J's and perceiving lead types being P's. Simple, correct. The problem is that the types those distinctions result in won't make sense to you if you were raised on MBTI. You know, for instance, an ISTJ. When I think of ISTJ, I think of organization, structure, which is SI, followed by pragmatism and rules and efficiency at work, which is TE. Well, an ISTJ in Socionics is going to have TI and SE, which is ISTP and MBTI. When you're used to SITE meaning something and then trying to interpret that with TI and SE, it doesn't feel right. Even if you know logically it's right, intuitively it doesn't feel right. So nonetheless, that's a problem for MBTI. So maybe it's too simplistic, and Myers and Briggs got it wrong. And it's one of those things that even if it's wrong, it's been in effect for so long that it causes more problems to change it than it does to leave it alone. Okay, moving on. Since we already broached Socionics, we might as well go to that one next. The positives are that it is a very detailed, refined, and complex system of personality. You have all 8 functions. Each plays a particular, distinct, and unique role in one's personality. And it's as close to science on paper as you're going to get. The problem is in the same thing. Like, its greatest strength is also its greatest problem. In other words, it's too complex for its own good. Most people don't really get it. It takes those who do get it a long time to get it. And it's still an Eastern system, so it's going to be a little bit foreign to the Western mind. Even the personality types, I've compared it like MBTI is like primary colors and Socionics is like secondary colors. So you have yellow, red, and blue on the one side. You have orange, green, and purple on the other side. There's no perfect crisscross match, except I would say the one that you could be easily in both systems, I would say, is ENTP. Every other one, you're going to run into problems like, well, I fit one of the systems in that type better than I do the other one. Are you still the same type? Maybe, probably not, though. So the problem with Socionics is that, most people, let's face it, most people don't have that strong of introverted thinking. And Socionics is a very TI heavy system. MBTI is a very TE heavy system. MBTI is pragmatic. You get it quick. It makes sense on the surface. You get it. You have fun with it. You move on. Socionics is more of a rabbit hole that, there are complexities that are ingenious and interesting, but the further you go down the rabbit hole, the darker everything gets, and you can end up being more confused than convinced of your type or other people's types, at least from my experience and people I know, their experiences with it too. So the problem with Socionics, its very strength is also its weakness, and that is its refined, detailed complexity. All right, moving on. Big Five. What I really like about Big Five is that it is scientific. I mean, technically scientific anyway. It's traits based. I like that because you can argue about motivations, you can argue about different levels of existential awareness or this or that, but traits are traits. I might not know for sure my MBTI type. I might not definitely know for sure my Socionics type, but Big Five, it's pretty clear. Are you late for work or not? I don't care what your excuses are. Are you the kind of guy who's on time, or are you the kind of person who's late? Check. Are you the kind of person who's social, or are you more antisocial? Check. Are you open-minded, or are you stubborn? Check. Are you curious about the world around you, looking at different opinions and different schools of thought, or are you pretty much locked into your own way of being? Check. It's traits. There's nothing to argue behind it. There's no, yeah, but this or that. No, there is no buts. The facts are the facts. There they are. There's the traits. The traits make up your type. Boom, done. All right. I like that. I like that very much. The problem is that there's no types in the Big Five. There's just spectrums. And even though being on a spectrum and seeing the percentage relative to others is a good thing, it's less fun without types. Now, similarminds.com has correlations between Big Five traits and MBTI types that I think work pretty well. Try that out. But the biggest problem with the Big Five is that most of us are into typology to type ourselves and others, and without distinct typings, Big Five loses a lot of its attractiveness. All right, last but not least, Enneagram. On the plus side, it's about improving yourself. It's about identifying what's wrong with your life and taking moves to fix it. And I love that. It's a spiritual system. So, it talks about your sins, your fixations, personal growth. It's not pretending or trying to be scientific, but it is very existential. So it might not be scientifically true, but it's true on a human existential level. And there's something to be said for that. It's very good that way. The problem with Enneagram, I think, comes with all the exceptions. A lot of mistypings in Enneagram. Why? Because people are in self-denial. There are contradictory things, like one type can be social, but if you're a self-preservation flavor in that type, what does that look like? What does it mean to be a social 5 Enneagram? What does it mean to be a self-preservation 2? Those things seem contradictory to me, at least. A 2 is all about being social. So how would a 2 ever be self-preservation if they're really a 2? And a 5 is all about knowledge and self-knowledge. Very introverted, perhaps the most introverted Enneagram type. How could you be a social 5? If you're social, you wouldn't be a 5. If you're a 5, you wouldn't be social. At least that's the way I look at it. Maybe I'm working with too rigid of categories, but to me, that's the problem with Enneagram. And another problem I'm going to delve into deeper when I have time, but Enneagram has its own different systems within the discipline too. Riso Hudson, I'm about as one could get. Pure one. There's no chance of me being another Enneagram type in that system. Now, when I look at Ichazo, though, it's a different story. Perhaps I sound almost like a 3 in that instead of a 1. Naranjo, it depends on which version of Naranjo you're looking at. But my point is that just like in MBTI, when you have different MBTI-based, Jungian-based systems that will give to different interpretations of the functions or lack thereof, which will result in different typings, you can result in different typings in Enneagram too, depending on which school of thought you follow. Riso Hudson, Naranjo, or Ichazo. There's some overlap between all 3 of them, but there are some differences as well. So that's a problem with Enneagram, the same as MBTI. But overall, Enneagram is a spiritual system, so it takes the whole argument about science right out of it. I think the problem with Enneagram is lacking that scientific basis. It's real difficult sometimes to nail a single type. I mean, in the real world, everyone is guilty of more than one Enneagram type sin. Sure, you might have one main one that might be your life problem. But if you look at all 9 types and all 9, problems, you're going to see more than one of those in yourself, So anyway, there's the pluses and minuses of each system. I, for my part, am going to leave this alone now and get back to work. As you can see, I'm so busy at work today. That's it. Have a good one. Peace out.